Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Fred Speaks. I pray this podcast finds you in the best of health and spirits. Today, I would like to get started with our quote for today. And it is, think twice, speak once. Now, the definition of the word think is to have a conscious mind to some extent of reasoning, remembering experiences, making rational decisions. In our interaction with each other, we could go around speaking the first thing that came to mind, but you can imagine the chaos that would be. If everyone decided to do that, many relationships would be broken. Instead of introducing a positive environment, it would produce an even more negative environment. I know some will say if everyone didn't take the time to really think before speaking, then at least you know how they feel or where they stand. Could you imagine going to work and speaking the first thing that you thought, or speaking the first thought that came to mind regarding your boss or your coworkers? That probably would not go over well. There are times when we don't have a conscious mind and our ability to be rational is altered. We then have the drunk man syndrome, in which we speak the first thing that comes to mind. As I mentioned, some will say that it's good because you don't have to guess where someone stands. Usually someone speaking their mind without thinking is a negative. I would not want to be around someone that was always expressing or pointing out something they don't like about me, or their dislike for how I look, or their dislike for something I'm wearing. That would be very draining to endure that on a regular basis. I would hope they would be more conscious of how they would want someone to speak to them. The thought comes to mind, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Think twice, speak once is a very interesting quote. We should think and think again before releasing or speaking the words that are not on a rope that we can quickly snatch back. This leads us into our subject for this episode of Fred Speaks. Our subject is be careful with your words. Let's start out by discussing the definition of words. And words are used to express one's emotions through speech or talk. In our current day and time, people oftentimes use texting to express their emotions, which I don't believe is an appropriate means of communication when it comes to someone expressing themselves. What I mean is that we already have an issue when it comes to verbal and written communication. Texting, along with its short acronyms and emojis, can easily be misinterpreted. However, communication methods is probably ideal for another podcast, so we won't dwell on that. Your words may have a certain meaning in your mind. However, in the mind of the person hearing and receiving them, they can mean something totally different. In the heat of an argument, have you ever said to someone, I hate you, but you really didn't mean it? No matter how you try to justify by saying, I was just upset, the person keeps recalling the words, I hate you. The words are out there, and there's nothing you can do to take them back. Words are powerful, whether coming from an adult or a child. There are times you can say something negative about a relative or a friend around your children. When the child sees the person, they say, my mama or my daddy said your breath smells like the bottom of a garbage truck. Or have you ever told someone something in confidence, but before you know it, everybody knows about it? Words can be like a hot potato. They tend to get passed on quickly and take on a life of their own. Words are spirit, which contain thoughts, emotions, and normally produce a reaction. Our words can be a slap in the face to someone, or they can be loving arms. Are your words more inviting, or do they push people away? Have you ever been around someone that has words of wisdom? You can be in their presence for hours because of the effect of their words. Or have you ever been around someone that has words of foolishness or negativity? Although you can tolerate them for moments, you tend to distance yourself when they start to speak. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. And I just want to go ahead and get back into our podcast today, which is be careful with your words. So some will say, why is it important to be careful with our words? As I mentioned, our words can mean one thing to us, but something different to the person receiving them. The ability to speak is a precious gift. As a child, we see others communicating, and we see reactions based on things being said and the tone of how things are said. We have our baby talk when we're just little ones. We're trying to communicate, but we can't wait until everybody understands what we're saying. The child wants to be understood. We must make sure that our words provide understanding and doesn't produce confusion and division. I'm not saying we have to walk around on eggshells, being afraid to say things to people because of how they will react. But at the same time, those are probably people. If you got to walk around on eggshells with somebody, those are probably people that have issues. And if you got to continuously be delicate with them, they probably have some issues going on. One of the main reasons we have to be careful with our words is because once you say something, you can't take it back. I mean, it once it's out there, there's no bringing it back. You can feel sorry and all of that, but you cannot recall. And I was thinking about with email, if you send a message that you didn't mean to send, you try to recall the message, but a lot of times the person has already read the message, so you can't recall it. And they even get the notification that you're trying to recall the message, but it's too late. It's already out there. They've read it. And it's the same thing with our communication. Once we say something, those words are out there. When we say it to an individual or individuals, it's out there. And even though you can say, I'm sorry, and perhaps the person will say, I forgive you, or, I'm sorry you felt that way or whatever. those words are out there, and so you can't take them back. You would hope that, at some point the person would, move on past whatever it was that you said. But yeah, it once those words are out there, they're out there, and then it's up to that individual of how they want to deal with it. So you can't take those words back. And the other reason is that words have meaning. So saying something, it can, raise a flag with someone, because you can say, "Oh, I was just saying that," or whatever, and I didn't mean anything by it or whatever. But in the mind of the person that received it, as I mentioned, it could be interpreted and received differently than what you were intending. So again, another reason why we should be careful with our words. And I don't know why, but it just keeps coming back to me that people that are listening into this podcast, not all people, but some people will say, I want somebody to be able to speak what is on their mind. And although you say that, it's easy to say that, but you really don't know how you would deal with it until you actually are faced with it. Especially if somebody is revealing something that is true, or even something that is not true about you. The fact that they're saying it, you may not like it. Even if it's the truth, you may not like it, because you don't want other people to know. The things you may be dealing with, or something that has happened in your life, something that you've done to someone, or someone has done to you, and you may not want people to know that. And so this is another reason why we should be careful with our words, because you don't know the damage that it can do once those words are released. Because, you can have stuff that about a person, and you hold it, and you don't share it with no one, and it's something that but out of respect for that person and love and care for that person, you don't go and broadcast it. And those words will not hurt. It won't hurt anybody if you don't release it. But once you release it, you don't know the damage that it can do to not only the person, but the people that are related to the person, their friends, their family, whatever. You don't know what those words can do. And so it just goes back to think twice before speaking, because once you do it, what I'm saying, it's out there. It is out there, and there's nothing you can do about it once it's been released. And I believe that we as people, we should be, if someone knows something about you, or something about them, and it's personal, and maybe they told you in confidence, you need to be a grave. You need to be a grave. You need to be able to hold it. And if it's something that is a matter of life or death, that's a totally different thing. But something that, can ruin a person's reputation, cause, a relationship that they're in to end, then it's not your place to release that, to speak that. And so we have to be careful with our words. And I know there's areas where people will say, no, I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something. And that's your choice to speak, about whatever. But just be prepared that, what the damage your words can do. And that's why, I was thinking when this subject came to me about be careful with your words. I was thinking about, something that occurred with me, and just a question, just caused a bad reaction. It caused a bad reaction on my part, because of the question. And those words, they resonated with me. They just kept playing back, like, and that question, it really got to me. So it was like, just a sentence, a question can cause damage. It, instead of drawing a person, it could push a person away. And so whether it's sarcasm, being sarcastic or whatever, we can't use that as an excuse that, I was just being, it's just a joke or whatever. Words have power to them. And the person that hears them, again, it is how they receive them. It's how they receive them. It doesn't matter how you are trying to project it to them, or you feel like they should understand that you were joking, or that, it doesn't matter. It's up to that individual of how they receive it. I was thinking about when the preacher at church is up speaking and he has the attention of the people, he can speak words that either are uplifting, or he can speak words that basically push people away. And so you don't want to, you want to be truthful with people, but sometimes you have to have a filter. You know what I'm saying? If somebody's overweight and they're struggling with their weight and everything, and they're trying, and they've just been in this cycle of they would start, and things wouldn't work out or whatever, and just for you to basically say something to make them feel like they're not even trying, that if they would try, then it would work, they would lose the weight or whatever, it could be hurtful to them, could be detrimental to them, unless they have a strong mind and will that, no matter what nobody says, I'm going to do, what's best for me. And so your words can be positive, or they could be negative. But either way, you have to be careful with your words, and I hear people say, and I've said it sometimes before, that my intentions were well, that, I had good intentions, but good intentions don't make it right. You can say something that, you're just like, well, I intended for it to be, interpreted in a good way. But again, you don't know how the person that is receiving it, how they're going to interpret it, how it comes across to them. And so that's where the issue is that sometimes we feel like, I know what I want to say, but we don't have that filter where it's like we're thinking about the other person, and it can be damaging. So I just want to encourage everyone to, when you're, especially, you get into it with someone, you get in a heated argument, disagreement or whatever, and you want to give them a piece of your mind. You really want to let them know how you feel, and whatever they said or did, you want them to know about it. You want them to know about it. And I'm not saying that you don't have that right. You have the right to let them know that something bothered you or hurt you, and you have every right to do that. But again, don't, just to say I hate you when you don't mean that, uh, in the heat of the moment, the person that's receiving that could be like, man, you know, she said she hates me, or he said he hates me, and they take that to heart, and even though you say, well, no, I was just upset at that moment, that person's is you know is hurt, especially if they love you, and then they hear you say you hate them, that some to the effect, I wish you weren't in my life, or whatever it is to be hurtful, and that person is devastated by that, and they won't forget it, because especially if that's not something you have been saying to them on a regular basis. Mostly you've told them that you love them and you care for them, and then all of a sudden you're saying that you hate them, and you wish they weren't in your life. So our words, whether we mean them or not, they have power. They have power, and I can recall there's some things that an announcement or something, and I couldn't make the announcement, so I asked someone else to do it. And just in the tone, the spirit of it, people were hurt. People were hurt, and I was like, wow, And I was thinking, I was like, man, I should have done it. I wish I had the time and the opportunity where I could have done, made the announcement myself. But these are things that, if you're not careful with your words, you can hurt people, or people can hurt you, with the words they say, So it's something that we all have to do. And I can see in the world that we're living in now that, there's no filter. Everybody just says whatever they want to say, and they call people out of their names and belittle people and stuff with their words. And this is it's like a tidal wave that spread everywhere, and it's mainly associated with hate, racism, and I mean, that's like the big picture, in the world of, that's like the happening thing now, whereas everybody, speaks their mind, and, and it's like, even when it comes to new relationships and stuff, people are like, I'm not putting up with this anymore, blah, blah, blah. If something happens, I'm going to do this and do that, and I'm going to say this and say that, and it's like, that wasn't occurring before, but we're just in an environment now where people just are tired of holding their peace. And I can hear, or recall the scripture talking about hold your peace and let the Lord fight your battle. If you can hold your peace, he will be the one that, to touch that person's mind or their heart, and allow them to be able to see what they have done. Now it's up to them whether they want to do anything about it, but if you let him handle it, then it takes you out of the equation of making the issue worse, and just doing damage that's unrecoverable, that you can't recover from that, or the person can't recover from it. But we have to be careful with our words. There are so many, sometimes we take it lightly that, hey, I'm just going to, tell her this or that, or tell him, and I don't care how they react. I don't care how they respond. And sometimes you have to do that with certain individuals, but I'm just saying, just going around, and that's just the pattern for everybody, where everybody's just, speaking the first thing that comes to mind and not caring about how people respond to it. I just don't think that would be an environment, number one, that I would want to be in, where, every time I turned around, somebody's, just, speaking the first thought that came to their mind, because we think things, about different individuals or whatever, but we don't say anything about it. We hold that to ourselves. Even if we knew something bad about a person or whatever, as long as it's not a matter of life or death, or somebody's, detrimental to someone's life. I mean, for the most part, we don't go around. There was a time we didn't go around just doing that, revealing people and putting their business all out there for everybody to know about it. But again, we're in a basically an environment where, anything goes, and, betrayal, speaking against someone that they may, hurt may come upon them, or that they may be put in a situation where they're away from their kids and their family or whatever. We just are in that type of environment now. But our words are powerful, and we have to know that something that we may feel that, oh, that's nothing, and we speak it or whatever, we just don't know the damage that it can do to someone, or someone that is close to the individual that we have an issue with. But our words, they do mean something. And, I've heard someone say that, if out of all the people they knew, they expected certain things from certain individuals, and then for an individual to basically speak something hurtful about them, instead of talking to them about it, it's like devastating to them, because they love this person, and they did not expect that, for them to speak something that was very hurtful, or something that, brought about shame and disappointment. So we need to, as the quote said, think twice and speak once. Think about, how would I feel if someone was saying these things about me? Or how would I feel if someone said this to me? How would I feel? How would I feel if, someone said some things about me in front of a lot of people, or they spread something about me to a lot of individuals? How would I feel about it? And then, if you know that you would not feel good about that, then you should, with your own words, consider other people. How would you feel? If certain things were said about you. So you need to take in consideration that, hey, if I say this, how's this going to affect this individual? Now, if you're being malicious, then you really don't care. You're going to speak it because you're trying to be hurtful. You're trying to be mean. You're trying to belittle. You're trying to make the person feel embarrassed or ashamed. So if you're being malicious, then I get it. There's nothing I can say to really encourage you to do things differently. But the main thing in my closing I would like to say, though, is that, number one, as I mentioned, once you say something and you release those words, you can't pull them back. They're out there. You can't pull them back. And even when you're not verbally communicating with someone, If you send a text message or you send an email, messenger, whatever the means of communication, once it's out there, it's out there. And that person, it's up to that person on how they deal with it. The person that is receiving it, how they deal with it. And like I say, some may say, hey, I forgive you, but they may never forget about that. They'll always remember those words. And so don't take your words lightly, like, it didn't really mean anything. You don't know that. To you, they may not have meant anything, but to the person receiving them, they meant something totally different, something hurtful, something mean. So we need to be careful with our words, and I hope that this podcast is helpful to someone, because like I say, I've experienced this many times of where I've said things and didn't think anything about it, and it was like detrimental to someone. It was very hurtful to someone. And, it didn't matter. I tried to justify it. I didn't mean it that way or whatever. But that person hearing what I had to say, it was very hurtful to them. And it changed our relationship. It changed our communication. This person basically withdrew themselves. They didn't want to, where they were talking to me like almost every day, they didn't want to talk to me anymore. They didn't want to deal with me anymore because of the things I said. And like I said, I apologize. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, But that person felt like when I said that, I spoke from my heart, that's how I really felt. And so I couldn't do anything about it. No matter what I said or tried to do, I could not do anything about it once those words were released. And it feels bad because it was someone that, I enjoyed talking to on a regular basis and everything. And my words, hurtful words, basically pushed them away. And then, I've also been on the end where I was the one receiving some words that, were hurtful, mean, and everything. And although I could have reacted the way the person reacted when I said something, I still tried to be there and be understanding. But again, like I say, it's not, once you release the words, it's not up to you of how that person should interpret them or receive them. It's that individual makes a decision on how they deal with those words and how they perceive them. And so I hope that everyone was able to get something out of this podcast. Be careful with your words. Like I said, we're living in a time now where there's not so much of coming together, but there's a lot of confusion and division. And so that's why I say this podcast, be careful with your words. That's what brought this about. It's like, why can't we have words that bring about unity, togetherness, wanting to be around each other, wanting to deal with one another, words that are encouraging, uplifting, and I know there's some of this going on, small pockets of this going on, throughout the world. But can you imagine if we had more unity and togetherness and people being able to communicate with each other and it being a positive way and not a negative? that in our homes, instead of arguing and fussing and fighting all the time, that we could have communication that brings us together, that we're able to resolve issues, and get, be on the same page through our communication, that, each party knows that, hey, I want to be here with you. I want to work through this with you. But our words mean a lot. I mean, we can't, how can we have anything if we don't have communication? And communication lets the other person know, where you're at. And so if your words are words that are pushing the person away, then you're not going to be able to have that communication. So your words should be inviting and drawing that person to you, that you can have rational discussions. And I know some people will say, well, I like to yell, and that's just how I communicate. But if you're yelling, though, you're not listening. You're not listening, and it's hard for the person to communicate with you if you're yelling. So at some point, you gotta, each party has to be able to come down and be able to listen. And again, be careful with our words, because you can be in a conversation and everything is going good, and then all of a sudden you drop a bomb, and then it's kind of like everything comes to a screeching halt. So our words are powerful. So we need to be careful with our words, that they are, like I said, that they're inviting, that they're bringing about peace and unity, togetherness, and not confusion and division. So again, I hope that everyone that's listening in got something out of this podcast, and encourage you and hoping that you will join us for another episode of Fred Speaks on iTunes and Spotify. Thank you.